you get to see like just the people who were successful,
The exemplars of success.
Right. Are we seeing the exemplars of success here, or was this a wider, broader example of success? You get what I'm saying? Is like, are we only seeing the positive, the positive actors here, or I don't know how to better ask the question than that.
I think it's a great question, and I think Nikki, Eduardo, Mark, who were students, coaches, trainers in the organization much longer than I was, have a different perspective. The way that I was brought into it to a course was through a fellow Harvard alum. Took the course with a dozen or two people of different walks of life, from college students to successful entrepreneurs. And some of the people who, at least my impression, both with my past company that I had some of my employees take the course, as well as my brother, friends, experientially, anecdotally positive. But as far as the raw numbers, I mean, there's somewhere in some lawyer's filing cabinet, thousands of anonymous questionnaires with very high satisfaction ratings. And the interesting thing is, the most vocal critics now, like the Mark Vicentes, Sarah Edmondson's, people who have watched HBO The Vow might be familiar with them. They were some of the most successful people in the organization, made the most money, the most material success, and were extremely vocal about their support. So I think that's a strange thing when you really think about it, of how could that be? For 17 years, someone touts the praises, does well financially, does well in their life, and then something happens and they do a complete 180. So,
well, you would think that if there as big as this was, there would be vastly more people talking crap about it than there has been, and it doesn't seem to me, because I've done some slight research. There doesn't seem to be a lot of people complaining about the system that you guys are talking about. No, it's very few people.
It's a handful of people, and they're they've made a lot of media attention. And anyone that does feel positively, whether they were a regular common person, or in some cases presidential families or things like that in Mexico, and higher level people in the US, the cost of being associated is disastrous. Right now, if you say anything positive whatsoever, you're personally a bad person and compromised in some way. So the silence is deafening.
I think, that's just the one point to add to that. I'm sure Eduardo has talked about this, but the reality is, they made it a RICO case. So imagine, you're a regular person, in a sense, taking a community college class, because that's how it was with the executive success programs. Most people just took weekly classes. Some people took sort of intensives. But imagine, you're taking some community college class and it's wonderful. And then all of a sudden you see headlines on the news that your community college is supposedly a sex trafficking organization, and it's doing all these horrible things. And like, you're just taking like great Tuesday night, classes on biology or whatever. So for most people, it's just the mere association, just to even say, hey, I took a class from ESP 2 years ago. People, feared that they could lose their job because someone could accuse them of supporting an organization that is this alleged sex trafficking organization. So people can't really grasp how the government terrorized an entire organization and a whole community of 17,000 people. That's why more people are not positive. Like what Nikki had said, my Tourette's, the transformation that happened with Tourette's is not unique, in the sense of there's other people, including Sunil, Eduardo, and Nikki, that have had probably equal types of transformations. It's just you can't see it as easily. And I would bet there's probably about 14 or 15,000 people out in the world that have also had similar experiences like that. It's just not worth it. They enjoyed their time. They had a wonderful experience, but they don't want to, they don't want to join the fight. They don't want to go against the US government. So
that's understandable. Look what happened to Keith. Nobody would want that to happen to them.
I think it's very astute what you have seen. There's very few people saying negative things because it was wonderful. There is a reason why billionaires, entrepreneurs, people from Harvard, doctors, attorneys, all the way down to nannies took executive success programs. They took it and they shared it with other people because it was profound. It transformed their life. They experienced more joy. It's not that somehow this was, we were selling snake oil. These kinds of people wouldn't be spending money, taking time out of their lives to go take a course like that. So it's great that you have the ability to see that.
And at the peak of the hate campaign, people like Mark, he was going to do a speech about tolerance and how NXIVM had helped him, and he was threatened by the prosecution. This was old Russian type of techniques to silence people who were positive about it. I personally went to Mark Agnifilo and said, I want to testify because I know these women and they're lying. And he was like, no, you're going to get caught up on the RICO. You shouldn't do this. So this is how we were silenced, and we're still being silenced. So it's you're right. There's a few people willing to do it, but there's many, many, many more. And little by little, there will all come out. There is literally hundreds and hundreds of people with thousands of hours of footage of saying how great this was. And there's statistics of 98%, 95% of awesomeness by anyone who ever took the courses. So even the people who hate it, if you watch The Vow, it's hard for them to make it look bad. They have to say, well, no, it was good, but it was a front for something bad. So
yeah. Well, I mean, even if you had a 98% success rate and only 1% of those got invited to the sex parties, I would consider that a pretty good success.
Well, and Nikki and I have had this conversation before. Is like,
I mean, I'd be pissed if I wasn't invited to the sex parties.
See?
I think we all feel that way because none of us were invited.
There was no sex
There
party.
were Jenny. The worst sex cult in history.
Before is like,
I mean, I'd be pissed if I wasn't invited to the sex parties.
See?
I think we all feel that way because none of us were invited.
There was no sex
There
party.
were Jenny. The worst sex cult in history.
You're right, the worst sex cult in history because nobody got invited to them.
You guys
Exactly.
have one job. All right.
Do you know that if you
over that.
Google,
I joined this and I didn't even get the weird sex stuff.
right? Exactly.
That's why I joined.
I came to this and all I got was this lousy
I'm
T-shirt.
teasing, I
Is this behind some other paywall? How does this work?
We should probably start one since we already have the reputation. I think
You've got
Right.
the
we've
brand
got
for it. You're like #1 on Google, right?
Somebody
Well, I
make
was
a
just gonna
goddamn
say,
T-shirt.
If you Google NXIVM, it says sex cult. If you Google sex cult, it's NXIVM. So I don't even know what a sex cult is at the end of the day, but I think we're not what people imagine when they
Well,
hear
if,
those
if
words.
everything is a sex cult, nothing is a sex cult.
Right.
Hey.
It sounds like there was a lot of volleyball going on. And
Yes,
like,
I know
I
you love the
want my money
volleyball.
so I do want to play this video by Mark. I do want to make a couple of things here. Is one, I'm personally, and nor is there anyone on the podcast making any claims about medical claims. But I will say this to anybody who knows me by reputation and knows what my areas of study are. I have read all of Keith Raniere's patents, and I have some idea about what the training it is that he was doing. And I find the claims around Tourette's worthy of interest. And I know Jules going to be writing about it because there are a lot of psychologists who read Jules' blog on social perception. And I think that I would put my reputation on saying I do think there's something interesting around that is worth testing in a clinic. That's not to make a claim because I wouldn't do that. Tourette's is the thing I know a little bit about how it could happen, and I have enough of an understanding of what Keith's teachings and methods were to where I could see that interrupting the circuit that causes these sort of sympathetic seizures is probably not the accurate term. Mark would know more than I do, but I do want to run this video with Mark here, and then he can give us some commentary on what we're seeing here. So give me a second.
You have Tourette syndrome, a neurological genetic disorder that's involuntary and has no cure. So what do you think I did as a little kid? I believed him.
The first treatment was a blood pressure medication to relax him. From there, we went to a few different seizure medications, advanced to Valium.
He's used to not being allowed in movie theaters, restaurants, many restaurants.
The tics were loud. They were often insults to people.
A teenager traveling to St. Louis was kicked off a bus after an episode with Tourette syndrome.
It's a disease where it doesn't matter how much money or how little money you have it.
I can't remember exactly what she said next, but at some point she said to me, "You can stop this."
My objective was to get results with 5 people and then try to teach it to someone else.
This is what we've been waiting for since I was like 8 years old.
We don't use any drugs. The only thing that we use is a talk approach.
They have to be willing to take a tremendous risk. They have to be willing to involve themselves in something that's new and different.
I always felt that my body betrayed me when I was 7 and I never forgave it. But I realized it might have been my mind.
It's almost scarier if it works, because then it raises questions. Who are you to tell me that I can't do this?
So Mark, this is part of a larger documentary that you were involved in making.
Yeah, so we filmed the documentary again. It's called My Tourette's, and now the whole movie is on YouTube now. People all around the world can see it for free, which is incredible. I do just want to say, I mean, there's so much that we could talk about, with Tourette's. And the fact that we've come on today is incredible, and I'd be happy to come on. I don't know if you guys are interested. I know it's not even specific to women against false accusations, but to do a whole thing about Tourette's would be incredible.